Could we have a pledge of allegiance? Yeah. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
United States of America,
and
and
to
to
the
the republic
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, could we have a roll call, please?
James Malcolm, this is the old roll call. I'm sorry, the full board roll call, but James Malcolm is absent. Diane Einen is absent. Michael J. Ham.
Here.
Faye Storms.
Here.
Orlando Reese.
Here.
Richard Jones.
Here.
And Danny is absent with notice as well.
Okay, could we take a quick look at the minutes and peruse those?
Yeah, it's from a year ago. Try to remember.
I know. It's amazing.
Refresh. Chair, I move to motion that we accept the minutes from the previous meeting.
Could I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Right.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, public comment on any agenda items? I don't think we have, do we?
Bill, do you have any questions on the financials?
No, not a single one.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so Rick and I had met and went pretty extensively into how I have got the proposed amended budget for 2021. Obviously, it's not a number out of thin air. That's 776,779. The administrative fees, that reflects the money that we've received so far for those project closings that were from prior projects after the post-closing affidavit came in. It includes what I believe the difference is going to be for Pods and Marlboro. It includes all of the projects that we've passed this year, assuming that they, even if they don't close it this year, the fees, I believe, still end up on this year's financials, but they all intend to close this year. As far as Romeo, we can only assume that it will happen because we approved it. So for now, that's what we have. The annual administrative fees will not change. The application fees assumes no other applications will come in. I don't know if that'll be or not. Miscellaneous fees includes the $500 that we intend to send to Innis for their project changes with the spa relocation. And then the project administrative fees pass through is anything when we have a project that gets passed along to the applicant. So like their public hearing costs or low-key brill when the project closes is a pass-through, or the CPA fees at year end. So the $100 per project is included in there as well. And then that number should mimic the project expenses pass through down in expenses. It does not this year. It is off $200, and that's solely because of an adjustment from prior years. So that's the reason it's off. It's not an error. Investment earnings has changed. If you wanted to look at page 7, you can see what was originally budgeted versus what I'm reading off of on page 6. But it has changed drastically. Originally, we were around back in 2019, in the good old days, the investment earnings were around $8,000. Now I'm hoping that we'll hit $1,640 in investment earnings. As far as the expenses, not too much has changed. So administrative fees will remain the same. As of right now, we're below budget, but that'll change by year end when we do annual site visits and continue doing what we're doing. The contracts for services I've left the same. I see no reason to change it at this time, although I'm not sure what it'll end up being spent on, if anything. The legal fees I've left at $30,000. We don't have any information to change it. Joe's firm is working on a billing software change. So we've been unable to get the bill for the first half of the year so far. Auditing fees, obviously that's going to stay at 10,000. Then the live stream I've decreased to 10,000 because I don't think that we'll end up having $12,000 in meetings for the year. Website and marketing, we're keeping at the 15,000. Office expense and postage has decreased a little bit. Project expenses pass through, I already hit that. Insurance, dues and fees, I'm sorry, I kept the same. Insurance needed to increase a little bit because of the increases in our Philadelphia policy, but you see it was only $90. Seminars and conferences I've decreased because the fees for the seminars and conferences are much lower when you attend via Zoom, right? They're not charging the $300, $400 that it usually costs. Sometimes it's like $50 right now. So I've decreased it. I did leave in like $500 wiggle room in case there happens to be an event in person this year between now and the end of the year. Miscellaneous, I just kept the $500. And then the grants is obviously not changing, 38,400. Travel and meals I've obviously decreased drastically because it don't probably not going anywhere this year. Does anybody have any questions on the 2021 budget changes?
Rose, not a question, just a comment. It's really illustrative for the other members of the committee to look at page 7, which
Yes.
gives you the trends, if you would, from 2017 up to and including year-to-date, our current year-to-date, or actually the 2020 actual. And so it's very illustrative, and there are big swings. A lot of them are explainable because of the way in which the board ran prior to Rose coming on board. We really didn't have much in the way of administrative expenses because we didn't have Rose. The PPE administrative expense. So there's a lot of swings in some of the numbers. Rose mentioned the investment income, which is disappointing, but it might wind up even lower than what we're projecting.
I hope it doesn't.
Page 7 is very, very useful to understand where we've been and where we're going to.
Yeah. So then going forward, ABO requires us to do a 5-year budget, which is just crazy because we just keep revising the 5 years as we're going, right? It's impossible to know. So what we've done, and Rick and I like kind of went back and forth, was we maintained what used to be done as far as figuring out the proposed closing fees for the years going forward. It's a 5-year average, and then I just rounded to a nicer number. But it's a 5-year average. Clearly, 2021 swings the average a lot, okay? But at the same time, you do see how like maybe Ulster County will start getting more businesses, maybe more things will happen, and all we can do is just base it on averages and kind of go from there. Clearly, we can revisit the budget next year and revise it again before we have to submit to ABO at the end of October. And we can look at changing the future years at that point as well. That's the only really swinging item. I've increased the annual administrative fees because we'll be closing on 5 new projects this year. 2 are coming off, but 5 are going on. I increased the administrative fees, the pass-through from the earlier budgets. And I'm not sure, it's hard to know. It just depends on how much is going to go through Loki Brill and not. But either way, it's a pass-through item. So if the revenue increases, so will the expenses. It has no effect on our budget. 2022 proposed. So obviously I lowered the investment earnings. I'm not foreseeing them going up much next year. Hopefully it will by the time we get to 2023. Administrative fees, I put in there for now after talking to Rick, an increase for inflation, if you will. So I increased it by 5%. We've had no change in our rate of pay since we started with you in 2019. So potentially leaving room for a 5% increase. Obviously, that's not set in stone. It depends on whatever contract the board votes on next year. The contracts for services, I hate to say it this way, but it's true. It's a plug number. At the end of the day, there's going to be money left in the budget if we end up hitting $360,000 in fees that come in next year. So if that happens, then we'll have more money to do more good and contract for more services. Legal fees, I imagine, should maintain this year, or maybe it'll go down, but I don't know. Auditing, I did increase to $15,000. It differs from the RFP and the response that we got back. But after talking to UHY, I do feel it's fair and makes sense. And I talked to Diane about it as well. So we thought it was important to at least budget for more next year. And then UHY obviously maintained they would do their best to keep the fee as low as possible. Live stream, I budgeted for 10,000 just because that's about where we were this year, and that seems to make sense. And website marketing, I left the same. Office expenses, I just put back to the 1,500. I hope it does not, but if the board changes next year, then we'll have to buy more letterhead, and we have some more expenses that we didn't have this year. The cost benefit analysis software, that probably a poor way to say it. I made up a number here, but I wanted to leave some wiggle room. Inform Analytics only cost us $900, but I have no idea what new cost benefit analysis software is going to cost. And we really just got the email this week. So I said, how about, or this past week, so how about $5,000 so that we have wiggle room that if should the new software cost more, we've planned to pay for it. Dues and fees, I double checked with New York State EDC, and even though our dues amount is based on the amount of revenue we budget for, this is clearly a wild year. And so they said, if we don't think that we're gonna be back at this level, that we can maintain the same dues amount. Meeting room rental, we obviously don't have to deal with anymore. Insurance, I increased by a few $100s in case there are more changes next year. Seminars and conferences, I increased to 1,500. Miscellaneous, I left at 500. And travel and meals, I put back to the 1,500 for next year. And then everything pretty much mimics going forward. The only thing that's changed from really, besides the 5-year average amount for the revenue, is the CFO fees. Rick is stuck, in my opinion, as CFO for at least 2022, but then I did put back the budgeted amount for 2023. The reason it's less than what we had proposed before is because 4,000 of it would stay coming from the IDA, and then we pushed 2,000 to the CRC for a budgeted amount. So the CFO would still potentially get $6,000. It's just that some should be paid by the CRC.
And Rick is not getting $6,000 right now, and I don't want
Yeah.
6,000.
So that's going to be moving forward with that, then you will get pay.
If it's somebody else, I don't know if he'll still be here in 2023. So we just want to anticipate.
Oh, I see.
If it's not him.
That was not me
Right.
asking for that.
No, I know. I'm sure.
No, it's fine. I understand. But it needed an explanation. You know, I do think Rose and I had a long discussion about this. You do need somebody who is a real CFO slash CPA. I understand numbers, but somebody who has the certification, if you would, to deal with public accounting issues as we get bigger and bigger. And I don't feel that I have that kind of expertise. Rose has a lot of that expertise, but she can't be both CEO and CFO. So there needs to be somebody else with comparable capabilities and accreditation. So I just gave Rose a heads up to be aware of that that's something as we get bigger.
And, yeah, another thing that Rick and I talked about was a discussion that Randall and I had a couple of years ago is, you know, we tried to find a CFO. Nobody wants to do it. And when I say nobody, I mean nobody that we would want to do it that we could try to find. I asked CPAs, I asked financial advisors, and nobody wanted to do it because, to be honest, they couldn't think of enough money that they would get out of it in order to compensate for the liability that's involved. Rick is signing off on like the Paris reporting, right? And the new laws say that Rick could go to jail if we're lying on our Paris reporting purposefully, which we're not. Don't worry, Rick. So for somebody else, you know, it's a huge liability. The way we got the $6,000 number was because Joe Scott said it would be legal and acceptable if Chris O'Connor, who's the CPA and owner of our firm, was our CFO, and then I could still be the CEO. It would be allowed. However, Rick and I don't think that that's necessarily the best move, because it feels a little bit conflicty, even if it is legal, to have my boss in real life be under me, really, or next to me in the IDA, and be the one checking the numbers that I have here. So
It has
we
the
just thought it was
appearance,
better if Rick was doing it.
it has the appearance of being squishy.
It does.
And we should avoid squishiness. So it's not going to work, but it's something to think about down the road. And I'm comfortable, by the way, signing off on the Paris report because I was so involved in it, 3 years ago. So I kind of know the ins and outs.
But that's kind of like a full-time job, isn't it, Rick? To do it?
To do
was
it,
for 3
yeah,
months.
but
Yeah.
to do the Paris reporting, you just have to be, you know, you need the 10,000 foot overview and to be confident in the numbers, just like a CFO of a company, right? Like if you're CFO at Disney, you're not sitting there entering the bookkeeping, but you are aware of what's going on and you know you have controls in place to hopefully prevent any major issues.
Yeah, hopefully. Okay, thank you. Was that it, Rose? On the budget?
That's it for me.
Okay.
No, Rose,
good.
I think we should just mention one more thing. I think we talked about it in audit, but I had asked you on a quarterly basis to Faye's point around checking and rechecking. I had asked Rose on a quarterly basis to sit down with me and go through, I would call it the detailed general ledger of all entries, particularly expense entries, but revenue, just to make sure and question each one of them, literally being like an audit of matching up invoices and bills with what we actually have running through the general ledger. So I am going to do that on a quarterly basis.
And that's obviously in addition to what our auditors do, because theirs is really more of like a spot check, where Rick wants to be more thorough, just so that we can
Have continuity, you know what's going on.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rick. That's great.
So we just need the recommendation for the finance committee to move this to the full board so that the board can vote on it at the next board meeting in October, so that I can then submit it to the ABO by the deadline, which is October 31st.
All right, I'd like to have a motion on that.
I'll make
Make a
that motion.
motion.
Oh, Orlando,
Yep.
Second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you,
Aye.
guys.
Okay, I think that covers us for this particular one. So I'm going to have someone make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second it.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and we'll directly go to the
CSA.
UCCR.
Okay, hold on one moment.